I want to talk about your first wife, if I may. I understand that by 1999, having been together for 10 years, your marriage was very much on the rocks. Would you blame that on wrestling?
Yeah, I would. I'd blame it on the wrestling, and I'd blame it on the person that I actually became. I met her through on a friend that I used to wrestle on the camps with, and she wasn't going through a particularly good time. But it was one of those ones that I had a romance with her, and then we fell away. We didn't really sort of see each other, so I got in touch with her again, and she had a little one at this time, and and obviously the feelings were there at the time. The feelings were there, and I loved her, and we got married, and I think she felt that I was taken away from something that she wasn't enjoying into a better life. At the time, I was heavily into the wrestling. I was building up my own character and building up my own reputation, and I expected her to follow what I was doing. There was no compromise. She had to follow what I was doing. Um, so she left her life up north to come down and live with me. And if you can imagine, I was on the road all the time. And if I wasn't on the road, I was training. And if I wasn't training, I was working. So where did that leave me? Time for her and her little one. And also in between that, when we was married, we had a son together who was, and unfortunately he was autistic. And it was a case that maybe at the time I didn't really accept it. And I didn't really, and this can sound really awful, I probably didn't really care about it, to be honest with you. I had my perfect setup. I had a wife, I had someone to care for me when I was at home, I had a son, and I had my career. I had my career in wrestling. I wanted to go training and everything, as I said, I was so selfish and self-centered at the time. Everything had to be done around me.
Well, to me, if I may, to me, as someone listening to this, from the outside, it seems quite It's quite a testament to how addictive the wrestling drug is, if you like. That you have a wife who you've already said that you loved, two children who you presumably loved, and yet when given a choice between building a life with them or being a wrestler on the road all the time, you chose the wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about choices. Life's all about choices, and whether you make the right choices and wrong choices. I said at that time, because I was building up my reputation. I always set myself out. Once I got over my shyness, I wanted to be the number one man in this business. In Britain, and that's the goal I set myself. I wanted to be the top villain, whether I wanted to be the top villain or top blue eye. I just wanted to be the top wrestler, and you can call it dedication if you want, but as I said, I was totally self-centered by what I wanted to achieve, and it was a case of, well, if she didn't fall in with what I wanted, then I'm sorry, you was going to get left behind. And when you look in hindsight, you need to compromise. Life's about compromise. Here's a woman that loved me to death. Worshipped everything I did, done her absolute best. But it's like she said to me when we split, and I do remember when we split because I was away working, and I came back to an empty house, and I was gutted because I couldn't even say goodbye to my children. But she said to me, well, Phil, we were on our own, so I might as well have been on my own. And of course, I mean, I was absolutely devastated. How could this person do this to me? What right does she have to do? Look what I've given her. But actually, when I look back, it's like, well, you gave her nothing but, being away.
So you see that now, but at the time, was there any sense of that? Did her leaving, in any sense, make you reflect on the way you've been behaving?
I think so. I mean, as I said at the time beforehand, I didn't care. In the end of the day, I was no say on the shows. I was messing around. I was, enjoying myself. Want of a better word, I was, out in the bar drinking, meeting the girls, doing what I wanted to do, and then going back and expected her to be all lovey-dovey and being wifey. What had happened, I put her on the pedestal, and obviously when she left, and quite rightly so, because I would have left me at that time. It was a massive reality crash, and yeah, of course, I took stock in my life. It was like, Phil, you need to sort your life out, you know. And this is where I actually finally realised that the line between me being Phil Barham and Phil Flash Barker, the line between that had been totally wiped out. So I was just, you know, both characters were interlinked. So what I had to do then was separate Flash Barker from Phil Barham and actually start being a human being again.
There is one element about the breakup of your first marriage that we haven't talked about during this interview yet. We talked about it off air before we started. I know your first wife once caught you taking steroids. Do you mind me asking, you know, for how long were you on steroids, and do you think, what kind of effect do you think it had on you?
Well, I mean, I was on steroids from, you know, a long time. You know, when I first started my career, because when I first started, I was probably about 11 stone soaking wet, so I wasn't that big. I was fast. But yeah, when you look at the big guys, you want to be like them. You know, you look at their bodies, you think, oh, that's the body I want. And so, you know, as much as you train and you train hard, I thought it was easier for me to take shortcuts. So I started off, you know, doing little courses of steroids, you know, stuff like Deca and Dynabol. And at the end of it, I was on, you know, who's list of steroids and drugs, you know. And it wasn't just the steroids I was taking painkillers, I was taking drugs to get ready for matches, drugs to calm down, drugs to go to sleep. It was a never-ending cycle, and obviously she knew, and she asked. It wasn't the first time she caught me taking steroids. She caught me twice before, and she said, gave me the benefit of the doubt, and she said, really feel this is your last time? I said, no, I promise I won't take it. Knowing full well that when her back's turned, I'll be, you know, injecting another steroid into my body. And, you know, yeah, of course it made me a slightly more aggressive. I mean, I never tried to be aggressive around people because, you know, I always knew that, you know, if I was going to be aggressive, I'd take myself away. But, yeah, you know, I'd get ratty, I'd get upset, and I wasn't at that time a particularly nice person to know. I really wasn't. In fact, I would say I was quite horrible. And not just to people I knew, but I was quite horrible to the wrestlers. You know, some of the wrestlers that looked up to me, I wouldn't think twice about hurting them. I didn't care. You know, that was, look at me, I'm big Phil Flash Barker, and, you know, and I'd go in and purposely hurt a few people. And looking back now, I became something that I swore that I never would be.
Were you aware, you know, obviously wrestling has a very long and tragic history of people who've died young through taking steroids and some of the other drugs you were just talking about. Were you aware at the time that you were risking an early grave, and you know, did you sort of balance it up and think you still didn't care, you'd rather just go for the body? Or
well, here's the thing. When I was young, I've always had heart trouble. I had heart trouble from a youngster. I had a heart murmur. But when you get starting to that cycle of taking the steroids and getting bigger, you don't care. You go for this. You go into denial of well, it's never going to happen to me syndrome. It always happens to other people. You know, I'm big, I'm tough, I can take it, I know what I'm doing. And it got to a point where, you know, when I bulked up and I was quite big and I was looking good, and I stopped taking them and I'd shrink and I thought, oh my God. So yeah, I was a classic example of a condition called sizeorexia. Again, because I was not a confident person, you know, getting a bigger body, I could growl at people, I could be horrible to people, people would look the other way, I'd go out to nightclubs and people would be wary of me. So I had all that confidence, you know, rightly or wrongly, it made me feel more confident about myself. So I just took more and more steroids. I didn't care, you know. I mean, I even took horse steroids. You know, I was taking growth hormone, everything, you know, because it was a case of my mind was in control, but I wasn't in control of what I was doing. I just did not care. I always said that when no one's putting them in, you know, no one's forcing them into me. It's my own decision.